So this has been a condensed version of what we normally do, largely thanks to Don. So I laugh, mostly in a good way. So last year we did our session, I don't know, 2 weeks before the season started. And I think it was a good session. Don was in line, I was in there, taking a sigh of relief, like, okay, we got through that. And Don said, hey, well, thanks so much for doing this. And I thought, you know what? Don, thank you. You were here, you came to this session, and you're getting your equipment. And my sigh of relief was like, I still have like 10 coaches to find. So I was like, you know what? If we can push this further back, then we don't do as much hopeful scramble after we do a session like this. So I appreciate that everyone is here. I appreciate that you're gonna get your equipment tonight, and it's gonna save us 4 and 5 extra trips on the back end. So thank you. And again, Don, you inspired this. It feels way more scrambled, but hopefully the outcome is that there's less actual scrambling. It's just feeling scrambled, all right? So yes. So BAA soccer, everyone probably knows by this level, we're community-based soccer. So what that really means is we're here to develop players, we're here to have fun, and we're here to learn soccer. What I always say, ultimately, when I talk to parents, is our goal in this order is 1, be safe. All of you have or will be going through the background checks, taking the concussion training so we can create a safe environment. There are, less safety concerns with kids hopefully running around with their own speed, kicking a ball than something like softball where we're swinging hard bats. But inevitably, we want kids to feel safe to where they want to come back. We want to create a fun environment because, again, that helps bring the kids back from one practice to the next, and it brings them back at the end of the season to come to the next season. And then third, if we have a safe and an enjoyable environment, then ultimately it means we can teach them some soccer. Especially at our young levels, I always say it's going to be probably 2 or 3 years where they learn a couple skills each year. Hopefully by the 3rd year, 4th year, it starts to look like soccer. Hopefully for our Cubs and above, we can start looking like soccer a little bit quicker, by the 2nd practice, and we can have a lot of fun from that standpoint. So with that in mind, as a community-based soccer program, a few things that we ask as coaches to be able to do that we wouldn't have to do if we were all out competitive, win at all costs. 1, we want to make sure we develop and go as close to equal playing time for all of our players as possible. 2, we want to be able to take into account the other team. I know that sounds a little bit funny, but anytime a team gets beat by a ton of goals, it's not very enjoyable for them. And inevitably, as our ages progress, we end up with fewer and fewer teams. Some of it's kids choose certain activities, they go that route, I get that. But if we want to be able to continue to offer BAA soccer at the older levels, we have to make sure that kids on your team and the other teams enjoy themselves and want to come back so we can have enough teams to continue to offer it. So just keep that in mind. If you're up by a bunch of goals, put the goal scorer back on defense, maybe in the goal. I know sometimes it's tough. I've had plenty of kids who you move somebody to defense, and next thing you know, on the next throw-in, they're trying to do a trade and move back up to forward because that's kind of what they like. So I know it's not a perfect, way to manage it, but we got to do our best as the coaches to say, hey, nobody likes to be beat up, and you got to think about the other team. All right, a few of the basics then. Our rule book is on the soccer website. So if you go to BAA online.org, you scroll all the way to the bottom of the page. I feel like it's getting longer and longer each time, but basically all the way to the bottom, you'll see the rule book. That's where you can go double check any of the specifics you need to look through. To do double check or review on things like number of players, time for quarters, all that will vary before each level. How many Bantam coaches are here, by the way? Quick show of hand. Okay. So this year for Bantams, we did a little bit of a change from what we've done in the past and what we've done for the lower levels. Essentially, we had enough players for 5 teams. We only got coaches for 4. So instead of turning people away, we added a player to be playing on the field. So, and Paul did an awesome job. He already updated that, luckily for us in the rule book. So we're going to have 9-on-9. So we have fewer subs, but didn't have to turn players away and didn't have to keep trying to find more coaches. So one specific call out that we did make as a different change this year. Any basic questions? Otherwise, I'll let Tom do all the soccer stuff. In between Tom, we will bring in Paul to talk through some referees, some updates that he's been working on as well.
Is there any other changes you would highlight in the rules from last year?
No. So I guess there's 2 changes, 2 updates we made to the rule book. Less of an on the field, and they kind of came out last year when we talked about them. I'll bring them up in the parent coaches meeting as well. earrings came up last year. I am particularly sensitive to things that families and kids do getting ready for the new school year, like maybe you're gonna go get your ears pierced. The challenge is, of course, they can snag, forever you can't have earrings in any sport, basically, right? It came up last year. Referees probably did what they were supposed to do, said you have to be off to the sideline. I have 4 daughters, 3 have pierced ears, and I know it's 6 months or whatever, there's an extended period of time they can't come out. So we changed the rule book, and I'll bring up in the parent meeting as well. You can now do sports earrings, which are basically like plastic, clear, like flat earrings. They're, I don't know, $6-7 for a 100 pack on Amazon. So if you have players in that situation, they'll hear about it tomorrow or Tuesday. So that was one big one. And then the other thing that we did make more clear is players that have beads in their hair. Again, I get it, you're going back to school. You want to take certain extra steps to feel special going back to school. So we didn't want to say you can't have beads in hair, but they have to just be tight to the head. And again, we addressed that last year too, because we had a situation where we weren't as clear in the rule book. A referee did probably what was the appropriate call based on us not giving good clarity, where it became a challenge. So we gave more clarity, so that way parents, players, referees, coaches can all be on the same page. But there aren't any real changes in terms of playing the game. Paul, I'm gonna have you come out.
Yeah, thank you, Will. I won't take up too much of your time, but I did want to introduce myself, Paul Goodwin. Like you said, I'm the referee coordinator. You will see me out in the field. We are short on refs again this year. We're probably down 4 from where we were last year on there. I'm still hopeful that I'll get a couple more before we start the actual games. But there are some, to Don, your point, there are a couple of rule changes. We talked about a couple of them on there. One of the new things we're going to add is a captain's armband. So we thought one of the things that we would introduce into our program is having an official captain of each of the teams, and the coaches would be the ones that designate who gets that, when, how many times, stuff like that. But the intention would be is that it gives some leadership skills to some of our kids that are playing soccer. Just kind of gets them into that role of being a leader, gives them that opportunity, and really for some of them, it really gives an opportunity to assist the coach. And then all of a sudden it brings them into that, when they get older, they could be an assistant coach or a coach, as we bring them up through. It's just that tiering of giving them another level of experience. And I think that'll be good. So I'm not sure what the colors are going to be, what they're going to, I did put them in the rule book. Right now, the only thing that we're going to do is we're going to say at the coin toss, the captain, the designated captain comes for the coin toss. We're thinking there may be some other things that we think of, but obviously the feedback coming from you, the coaches, and the level directors is going to help us point what do we really want to do with that, if nothing more than just having that band and deciding what we want to do with it within the team on there. So that's one of the additions there. The other thing, it's not a change. We do have that rule that we put in there to help with if there's a imbalance of performance of the teams, that we have a goal differential rule in there. At the Cub level, it's 5 goals. At the junior and Bantam level, it's 3 goals. That the intention is there is to give the team that's behind a little bit more advantage when they're doing a goal kick, that the other team has to back away from the ball, give the team that's behind a little bit more chance to march an attack coming down the field in there. And that is laid out in detailed in the rule book. So please look at that. Well, there was one other thing I was going to cover. Interaction with the referees. Obviously, something that we want to do is just make sure that there's an appropriate interaction between you as the coach and the referee. I'm going to try to do the best I can to educate the referees. Many of them are new, many of them are inexperienced, many of them are very young, in the terms of being a referee, and they are very timid. And so sometimes that interaction with coaches is very difficult. However, I want them to, at the start of every game, come and introduce themselves to you, make sure that you know who they are, they know who you are, and you can have an appropriate start of the game, with how everything's going. Any questions that you have about the rules go to that referee, all right? The referee then is the decider about what that rule is for that game. And all I'm saying is, it may not be right? It could be absolutely wrong, But what I'm asking is that if the referee feels that they're right, let it go. We'll deal with it after that game. If you can negotiate with them and they feel like, oh, maybe I do have that wrong, it's better to set that tone if you have that question appropriately at the game. But the referee has the final say in what that rule is. So it's not about being right or wrong. Just let the referee go with that, and then can come to me, can come to Will, and we'll deal with the education on what that rule really should be after that. So, all right. Being young, sometimes the referees, they won't have loud whistles, you know, stuff like that. If you have some questions, halftime is a great time to just go over and just ask some questions, you know, if you do at that time, and not debate them during the game. Let's let the game go, but halftime is a good time to have that appropriate conversation with the referee. All right? That's kind of what we're looking for, right, Will? Yeah. All right. I think that's all I had. A couple of other things on the safety thing. I tried to soften the rules so that some of those rules that we had that weren't really safety related, but sometimes got people in, I'll say, in trouble. The shoes, having to be tied shoes, they just have to be appropriate shoes now, athletic shoes, and they're not a safety concern to anybody. Bracelets, stuff like that can't come off, covering them is going to be appropriate. And I made that change and update in the rules. In other words, sometimes having a small, thin friendship bracelet on there, you know, some type of beads on there is not a big safety concern. If you put a soft wristband over it or tape it, it's no longer really a safety issue. We are now going to allow that. If it's too bulky, we don't want to do that. Here again, the referee is going to be kind of the decider on whether it's too bulky or too dangerous in there. So that's all I've got for now. Anybody have any other questions before we move on to the most important part, the skills session? All right, thank you everybody.